Hello again. I just realized that as we've been gathered now several weeks, I think this is week 4, we never even introduced ourselves. But that's all right. You know who we are by now. And I am so glad that you have gathered with us and continued in this study. And again, I hope you brought somebody new and I hope that they find value in this conversation. We continue this week. We left off last week with this image of a road being leveled,
Right,
a
right.
person being prepared for what is to come. And prepared for what? The second coming of Jesus is really where we're driving to this, right? In our experience with that.
But let's talk a little bit about roads and the how they can help us or really flip us for a loop. So w- we're used to seeing roads and roads we drive on regularly, but every once in a while I can get caught off guard. I can go around a corner and be completely upended with what's there. And I'll give you an idea of this. I wish those who do road construction would put their workman ahead sign further out and then have maybe 2 or 3 of them in a row. So it's like the first one goes, yeah, okay. The second one goes, oh, you better wake up, Steven. The third one is, around the corner, idiot, there's going to be trouble.
Sounds like you might have a focus issue.
I do, because when I'm driving, my mind is full of things.
But I'm not going to leave you there on that island all alone because we do, is the point. We all have this, right? We all have this.
So, our focus today is with Mary. Look at Mary. She's about ready to get married. She's a child. We just went through a wedding with Connor and Caitlin for months, for a year. It's all they talked about. It was their focus. They were so excited about what was to happen.
And every conversation had another bend, a turn, or a twist in the midst of it.
Yeah, but eventually it went off. But here is Mary, and this is all she's been focusing on with getting married to Joseph. Then all of a sudden, she goes. Now she needed to have 2 or 3 road signs getting her ready for this night, but an angel in the midst of her room alters, upends, detours. I think you said earlier, U-turned her entire life.
A complete U-turn. The U-turns. We all have a few U-turns in our lives. But it's funny. I don't know about you. When you're traveling down 86, for instance, and you need a U-turn, sometimes it's not there.
So we could start. We're going to do this in a second. We could start with greetings favored one, but I think we need to see where that U-turn is, because the angel ended, for nothing will be impossible with God. She agreed after hearing all of the arguments. She agreed, not with, yeah, okay, whatever will be, like a teenager.
I don't know if it was an argument, but when she heard all the facts, here is what is.
Right.
Here's what is in place of you.
But here's the neat thing. Even though she had some of the facts, she doesn't have a clear, concise blueprint.
She doesn't know what the road looks like around this bend.
Right. You and I, when we enter into our faith journey, we don't know what the end result is going to be. But this leads us to the questions that we want you to look at.
So as we begin to focus in on the question, and the first question to consider today, think about, right in the very beginning, think about the fact that God came to her through an angel. God came in a manifestation to her.
To be a partner. And that's the question.
Invited her to
Right.
be a part of his story.
So with that though, Craig, the question for our group is, how do you see yourself as God's partner to make good and faithful things happen? Mary wasn't prepared. We don't see ourselves prepared either. Talk about that for a few minutes.
So we left you just a second ago, a few minutes ago, with this thought of being prepared. And I'm challenged by that because was she prepared? So let's, in order to dig a little deeper into that and figure that out, let's consider the greeting and the salutation,
Okay.
the beginning of that conversation, that awakening moment of she's in a room, probably by herself. Well, we'd
I
have
would
to.
have to assume
In
that.
my mind's eye, I see Mary being in a room by herself, lounged, relaxed, maybe pondering this wedding.
Right.
But something weird's going on with her body too. Maybe she's aware of it, maybe she's not. But then this happens. Gabriel appears and does what?
Greetings, almighty favored one.
So ponder this for a second. An angel shows up in your life and goes, "Hi, Steve. How you doing, bud? You are the favored one." You get the point, right? How would any of us handle that?
Right.
So dig into how Mary handled that.
I mean, the way that God enters her life is through an angel. So it's abrupt. It's not something that was led up to.
It's an interruption.
It's an interruption. And God uses interruptions in our lives. We may not hear those words, favored one, but sometimes we know in our heart of hearts that we are called. We've been given a mission to do.
We're assured that we have that.
Right. And so here's Mary, and he's saying, "You're the favored one," and then explains what that means and goes through the process. And she asks some questions. It says that, I like Luke in a little way downplays it, like we do in many ways. Sometimes when we are called to do something, our character, we want to not be brash and, stand out. We like to be in the background. But this angel is saying, this is the plan, and God's going to be able to handle it. But she's asking questions like, well, what about? And what about this? And in the end, he says, don't worry about it. God's got it.
Did you not hear me? God is with you.
God is with you. And so I think instead of a reluctant yes, she now completely understands that this is a go, and I'm ready to do what God is asking me to do.
And I think it's important to point out, I have to believe that in order for her to get to that place that well, like we've been talking about in all the weeks leading up to this conversation of telling your story, witnessing to God, making sure people knows that what we're talking about here has been given to us for what? For our benefit, for our good. And in that, I have to believe by her response, she did have good teachers. She did have a background. She was brought up in the way.
She was prepared to give that answer.
Yes.
So here's the question. Our understanding of grace declares that God says this to all of us, if we could just hear it. In what ways do you see with assurance that God holds you in favor, that God is with you? I think we need to fully understand that we are in God's favor.
I'm expecting you're going to need to have maybe the next couple of minutes of silence to ponder that before you begin to share with one another what that means.
It's a U-turn for you to really begin to understand you are in God's favor. Take some time.
I really hope that you struggled well through that one, because that could be pretty perplexing to actually put yourself in that place.
It comes down to a little bit of self-esteem, Craig. Thinking about it too,
Mm-hmm.
is so often we don't see that in ourselves.
Mhm.
So how can God favor us if we can't favor ourselves?
So I want to back up to that again, and back to a few weeks ago, we talked about the gathering and the
Mhm.
corporate part of it. It's very difficult often to see it in ourselves, but others around us can see it and identify that for us and help us understand that these truths and that this is truly happening in
Right.
and with you.
So let's bring this to our third point then. Here is Mary, a child, being favored by God. It seems to be utterly fantastic of what she's being called to do. She's a virgin, and yet she's going to carry the most high child.
But consider the timing of all of this. She is in the most exciting moment of a young woman's life. The wedding is upon her.
Right, right.
And then this U turn, which puts her in a very difficult social position.
Social position. She's got to confront her parents. She's got to confront Joseph with all of this. But in the midst, she has the fortitude to say yes. And I am willing, and kind of like,
Well, I love her words. Isn't it? May it be so.
that's one translation, or as you wish is
As you
another.
wish. That thought of, Lord, may it be your will.
So, speaking of, Lord, may that be your will, let me ask you this question. Imagine yourself in that setting. Could you come to a point of obedience with a fantastic work of God so quickly, or at all? Do you see yourself questioning, arguing, debating, and refusing?
Or even more importantly, would you even have the ability to respond that way without arguing, without debating, without refusing?
Right. So take some time, focus on that around your table, and then we're going to see you again next week.
Grace and peace be with you, friends.